This is your last panel, and maybe what we all want to know, where is the price going? We have Ugly Old Goat, we have Murad, we obviously have Tone, we have Tyler, all of which have different trading strategies, different views on the market. And this is going to be a fun one because for sure I'm going to ask the hardest questions that I can think of right now, and I work with them every single day. So let's see if I can play around a little bit. So let's get started, and I'll start with my partner to the right, Tyler, which I think everybody's been asking me. We talk, and everybody's quite upset about it usually, how potentially we are going to go sub 1,000. Yet, we just wrote a piece that we believe that Bitcoin is going to go to 10 million. So what the heck?
Yeah, that's the point, is don't tell me what to buy, tell me when to buy it. That's step number one. That means all asset classes will go up and they will go down. You want to be out of them when they are going down. You want to be in them when they're going up. Oh, Tyler, what a brilliant idea. But it's that simple if you know technical analysis. And the people that are up here know it and use it in different ways, but we all interpret it differently. I'm not guessing at that number 1,000 that some of you have heard. I've been saying it since December of last year, and my clients and my family and myself, we have been completely out of Bitcoin. That's from a technical point of view. In one system that I have that is the most effective system I've ever come across, which is called hyperwave. And it simply says that if something is in one of these things, that's great for a period of time, and then necessarily will not be great for a period of time. We are in the period of time that it is not great, in my opinion, according to this one system, which everyone up here will admit there is no system that's always correct. Therefore, I know my system at some point, hyperwave, will prove not to do what it has done 400 times in a row. Maybe on this 401st time will be the first time. I'm ready for that. I told people a number of months ago that if we could hold 6,000 and go above 8,500, which I didn't think was going to happen, that I would become more bullish on the Bitcoin price. It didn't happen, therefore, I didn't have to get more bullish. Now I go back to the basics, which means we're going to go to 1,000 or lower. I still hold that today, and until I have evidence going the other way, using a bunch of different technical systems, that's what I will continue to say. But we wanted to clarify before this conference what we really believe. People thought, and a lot of trolls said, this is just FUD. Tyler and Leah have got something going. They want to force the price down, all this kind of silly nonsense. This is what is important. I am very proud to be holding this, which is called the Bitcoin Standard Bearer. This is because of one gentleman who wrote a book, The Bitcoin Standard. But it was then reinterpreted by another gentleman on our panel, Ugly Old Goat, who said, let's stop calling ourselves maximalists, because that moniker was given to all of us in a very cynical way by someone who is not a Bitcoin standard bearer. So what this represents is what Leah and I really believe. Bitcoin is the answer. It is the only answer to a worldwide macroeconomic problem. There are 4 other possible answers that we will talk to in a bit when other people can grab my mic away from me, that are just as possible as a solution to the world problem, and one of them will be chosen. This is the one I want to be chosen. This is the one that has the least collateral damage to the least number of individuals, institutions, and countries. But they don't know it. We know it. Many people in this room know it. But that doesn't matter. And the thing that makes price go up and down is the total amount of supply versus demand for any asset class. And so what Tone Vays needs to be remembered for, besides all of the contributions he has done up to this point, is this conference. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of us calling ourselves Bitcoin standard bearers. But don't mix that up with trying to give people advice about where the price is or where it's going. That's another question, a totally separate question. And we can get into the $10 million figure, which is where I hope Bitcoin goes. And that's why there is this potential conflict between where we are right now and where I think it's going to go.
Thank you, Ty. And Tone, yes, thank you so much for organizing this incredible conference. Everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you to the speakers that attended.
Now, this is fun that I get to ask you price questions, as we are all here because we know you are the price maestro, the TA maestro here in Bitcoin. So specifically to your system that you've developed, I wanted to ask you. So as some people here may or may not know, but the Tom DeMark system was actually invented by Larry Williams. Then Tom DeMark, the TD sequential, took a lot of Larry Williams' work, changed it up a little bit, sold to Bloomberg, made billions of dollars, but all intents and purposes, it is a brilliant indicator, which is why Tyler and Tone love it so much. In my understanding, it's around an 85% confidence interval around it. Now, Tone, brilliantly, made it even better. And now, arguably, you are one of the best traders in the world of this indicator. And so, also, you've believed and talked about and teach how it works so supremely well with Bitcoin. So just a question to you of why do you think the way that you analyze price is such a good way of analyzing where Bitcoin is going, and why has it been able to call the bear market?
Oh, boy. Yeah, the systems that I use for trading, well, that I used to use for trading a lot more when I had the time to sit in front of a computer, they were pretty good, and but they are on a slightly different time level. And this is where some of the work that I do and some of the, I guess, price predictions that I do differ from Tyler. He has a much longer time perspective. I really don't even think about Bitcoin. I don't think about Bitcoin being $1 million at the moment, not to mention $10 million. And yes, I also had my price target of the bear market of 1,300, which is approximately the same. That was just a longer term outlook, but my experience is more of a swing trader. So, and I really like the sequential system because it's one of the few systems that doesn't analyze price, it analyzes time. And by being able to analyze time independent of price, it gives you a much better dynamic as a trader, because now you have something that a lot of traders just don't use in their trading. So by adding the sequential system to your trading, you're adding that time component that allows you to time it better. Has it been great in the current bear market? Not as good as it was in the bull market of 2017. And it's not that the system is better in a bull market versus a bear market. It was just working better because it literally predicted the $3,000 top in the summer of 2017 when we had the 40% correction. It predicted it almost to the day. And then it did it again at the $5,000 top on the day itself. I was able to predict the top to the hour. I just got lucky, I guess. But again, you can say that I got lucky, but I used the specific system, and I explained why I was calling it to the hour. Did it work as good in the bear market? Did it help me get out at the top at the very peak? No, not this time. And no system is ever going to be perfect. But you have to combine the fact that even if your system is not perfect, if it gives you structure, and this is one of the things that I was teaching in this workshop on Thursday, and thank you to those that came early to the conference. If technical analysis completely fails for you in trading, but it helps you to do better position sizing, it helps you with your risk management, it gives you structure, it keeps you from making mistakes like, yeah, I'm going to remove this stop loss just this once, or hey, my position is losing and I can add to my position and lower my average entry. If technical analysis helps you avoid these horrible mistakes, then technical analysis is doing its job and you can be a very profitable trader.
Thank you, Tone. And Murad, you've been studying under brilliant practitioners. You said earlier that one of your biggest mentors is Willy Woo. You've been doing a lot of work helping Willy with the NVT. So you absolutely, all of the gentlemen on the stage have different trading strategies. I would love to hear about yours, but specifically, you have also called at one point for a $10 million Bitcoin, although I believe in a very different way that Tyler and I have. So could you explain your thought process on that?
Yep, for sure. As I've mentioned sort of in the previous panel, I like to not only use technical analysis, but I like to combine it with some of what we call blockchain forensics, where we sort of look at on-chain volumes, various kinds of on-chain flows, Bitcoin days destroyed and its variations, realized cap, thermo cap, etc. And sort of we like to place our swing trades and our positional trades when both the TA and the quote-unquote FA of this sort of align. To give a price prediction, which is slightly different to Tyler's and Tone's, in my opinion, we will bottom somewhere between 1,700 and 2,300. So I am just a little bit less pessimistic than my other friends here.
I'd actually be very okay with that. Like, realistically, I do think we will hover right around 2,000. 1,300 is just, TA is telling me 1,300. What do I think is going to happen? I think that those that are waiting for 1,300 might not get that lucky. I actually don't think it's going to go there, but TA telling me that it should.
Yeah, and without sort of going into too much detail, and anybody who approaches me later, I can sort of expand on that in more detail, but a lot of sort of these on-chain indicators that me and Willy Woo and some of our other friends are working on, they are generally pointing to a certain cluster in the sort of the 17 to 2,300 area. And I also think that we will definitely see a bottom in 2019. In particular, I'm looking at late spring, early summer. But of course, don't hold me to it. This is just my subjective opinion. But yeah, I think some of the things that I think can still be considered quote unquote an edge. I think when institutional participants come in and they will be deploying sort of data scientists and quants to analyze these things in much greater depth, I think some of these edges will disappear. But I think we probably have 1 or 2 more cycles where these things can be taken advantage of. And I would encourage other people to sort of look into some of this stuff as well, because it's very, very interesting and fascinating, and across different blockchains and across different cryptocurrencies.
Thank you, Murad.
Let me just jump in for a second. I disagree, as I said, about the price. And it's not a small thing to me how low we go here, just because of this system I call hyperwave. There's a huge difference between 1,300 and 1,000, and I've had some great discussions with people in the audience about they are sure that if we go below 1,000, that's going to kill Bitcoin. It will take all of the enthusiasm out of an awful lot of people that are enthusiastic. And my response to that is that's what we need. That is the definition of a bottom. That's the definition of capitulation. Even if it's a small number of people, I don't think it is a small number. I think most people thought that it was going to hold at 6,000. I think a very large number of people thought it could hold at 5,000 and 4,000. And now I would bet that the majority of people looking at this space believe that 3,200 might have been the bottom. That tells me it is not the bottom. But the biggest indicator I've been using is the number of alternative crypto projects that are still coming out. And that's what it means to be a Bitcoin standard bearer. I don't see the ability of Bitcoin to do what we know it can do and we want it to do if there are 4,000 barnacles on the hull of the ship. It slows it down. It makes it inefficient. It doesn't get it to where it needs to go in the time it needs to get there. So this is a very subjective thing, and you either agree with that or you don't agree with it. But trying to argue about going from 4,000 down to maybe there will be 12 good projects is irrelevant to me. What is relevant is removing in the marketplace those things that don't deserve to be there because there's something better to turn to. And as long as there's a question about those other projects, maybe they're better this way, maybe they're better that way, maybe they add something that Bitcoin can't do, then Bitcoin must fall in price. So look at the landscape. How many have been put out of business? Well, I think the number is 1,000, but we've still got 4,000. It needs to get down to 100 and then 50. So the question is, at what price must all of these projects drop and Bitcoin drop to achieve that? That has nothing to do with hyperwave, but it is consistent with my conclusion that 1,000 will be hit, at which all of those of you who have told me that's the end of it. It's going to die. Bitcoin is not going to die, ever. But it's not going to go up until everyone, meaning outside our ecosystem, understands its uniqueness. And they can't understand it with all this other debate going on. So that's why I believe we will hit 1,000 and probably go well below it. But the measure isn't the price. The measure is the competition.
Thank you, Tyler. Now, Ugly, you are a goat, but you are also a bull on this panel. You have come out with some interesting statements. You trade also and think differently. You have an expertise, my understanding, is in basis. So from your perspective, what are you seeing in price and why are you currently a bit bullish?
Okay, well, first let me preface this that I was deeply involved in the gold market in 1979 and 80 when we ran up, I think it was during when Russia invaded Afghanistan, to $850. And then we proceeded to go into a long-term bear market that lasted for years. But during that time, there were predictions, and I was as much caught up into it as everyone else, that gold was going to go to $3,000 or $6,000. And we had every reason to think that that was going to happen. So I see what Tyler's talking about when he says it's going under 1,000. And I also see what he's talking about, says, hey, this thing could go to 10 million. So my question is not whether or not it's going to do either or both, but am I and are you prepared for either outcome? And that's the way I approach things. Now, as far as why I am bullish right now, is I do look at basis as a fundamental indicator. It is not a timing indicator. Your timing indicator is what Tone has been teaching you in your classes. He teaches you the technical charting, the moving averages like Tyler has gone through, this consensio. I've never seen anything so thorough. Yeah, I went to Larry Williams' seminar, the same thing, and yeah, I had a form of the sequential system taught to me, and Tone's improved on it greatly, and these things are useful. But there are certain things also that I look at. I'm very much a believer in long-term charts. The most important to me are the weekly charts. And the fundamental thing that I look at, it's not timing, but it's a fundamental thing, and that's basis. And basis is the relationship between the futures price and the cash price. And there should be a carrying charge in Bitcoin. It should be somewhat like gold. And normally there has been until this last year. And if you remember during the peak in 2017, there was actually a carrying charge or a contango. It was like when Bitcoin was 19,000, you could sell the futures over 22,000. You could lock in a premium of where Bitcoin is today. Now think of that. And I came within just a few percent. I was looking for 1 week up of 60%. I was going to turn everything around. I think we went up 56 or 57%. I said, no, we hadn't quite reached it yet. And getting in is much easier than getting out. Finding a top is much more difficult than finding that bottom. But this year, and back then, when in 2000 and what was it, 16, the Chinese exchanges were as much as $400 under the futures were $200 to $400 under the spot, and people were looking at about, oh, this thing's bearish, this thing's bearish. Well, timing-wise, it stayed there, and the market didn't go up right away. But fundamentally, it's bullish because anybody that's using the market, if you're going to buy Bitcoin, do you want to buy it now at $3,500, or would you rather buy it for June at $3,350? Well, it's just a no-brainer that it's a better buy to buy the futures because you've got that support under it, and that backwardation in the market lends a fundamental support. It's really not technical, but it's going to lend that support. Now, and another thing that I view things a little bit different than other people, a lot of people don't like right now, we're in this little tight, narrow range. I call it the virgin trade, okay? Because it doesn't matter which way you go. You can go long or you can go short right now. But the key is you limit your risk, and one side's going to be right. If you're on the right side, you're going to do quite well. And if you're wrong, okay, you're going to take your loss. And that's the way I look at it. So right now, I judge trends by weekly charts. The trend right now, because technically we did break the 2-week low, so in that regard I'm bearish, but then it didn't go anywhere, and I'm looking at this basis, so I'm long. I mean, I'm not like in a big way, but in a decent-sized way. And if we go now back up above the 2-week high after tomorrow, which is going to be under 40, under 4,000, I think of things just a little bit different. What if, and I'm always thinking, what if the worst and think of what if is the best and what is the worst? What if we take out that 2-week high and all of a sudden we run up to 6,500 or 8,000? That's going to change a whole lot of people's minds. We got a whole lot of people, that are caught. And that's a far more risky thing for me than I'm not going to be playing this move down to under 1,000. I recommend that I'm moving as much of my business as I can to have. I have income income in Bitcoin. I recommend that you do dollar averaging. If we're correct fundamentally, it's not going to make any difference whether you're buying at 3,500 or 6,500 or 900. Okay, and that's what you have to, and you can measure that simply by looking at the previous peak, which was in what, 2014 in January or December of 2013. And if you started buying Bitcoin at that peak and just used a disciplined dollar cost averaging method, you did very well as 90% of even professional traders. But you had to hold on to it throughout the whole period. So that's where I'm at. I'm not super, you know, the key is I am bullish, but I'm bullish because of the basis. It's not confirmed yet. If we pop up, I'll probably be adding to the position because I am a position trader, and it'll be confirmed then. I do like taking a position when the market is narrow and not doing anything, because I want to be in there, right? Or if I'm right, I can jump on it and really build a position that way. So that's where I'm at now. We'll see if it happens or not.
Thank you, Ugly. All right. Well, now I'm going to spark a bit of a debate between you guys. And like all the speakers in this conference, thank you, Tone, very controversial people, and we like making ridiculous statements. So let's start this one that I know you and Tyler differ on. So I will start with Ty. Given that Bitcoin is an asset class, similar to all asset classes in, you can trade it similarly to all asset classes in history in certain ways, and all asset classes have been manipulated throughout history is something that you've always said, Tyler. And we've also talked before about how not only that, but Bitcoin is extraordinarily thinly traded, and if anything, more manipulated, at least right now, than most asset classes in the world. So I know that Tone has a disagreeing belief when it comes to manipulation. This is merging a bit fundamental analysis and technical analysis, given that the traditional TA believes that everything is priced in. But Tyler, why do you believe that, you know, there is such manipulation in Bitcoin, and how does that affect price now? How do you think it will continue to affect price in the short term? And will this change and therefore provide capitulation in the future if things get cleaned up a bit?
Yeah, that's a very, it's a great question that has a very simple answer and a very, very complicated one. The simple answer is that the thing that we are talking about, let's call it an asset class, let's call it Bitcoin, the thing that we are talking about is designated in something else. And a lot of Bitcoiners say, I don't care about the price, I only care about the fundamentals. If the fundamentals are sound, history will take care of itself. And I think that's a true statement. But it is not a timing statement. Eventually is a very long time. I think it was Keynes that said, in the long term, everybody's dead. And what that means is timing is important. And what can happen, and does happen in all asset classes, is there are people that are in those to make money. Their sole purpose isn't to make money trading with rules, it's to make money. There's two groups of those types of people. One, they are regulated and so constrained in what they are capable of doing to make that money. And there are the unregulated ones. In our space, they are unregulated, which means they can do anything they can get away with. And they have, and they are. And that's one reason we're in a bear market, because the rest of the people in the world that participate in regulated securities and commodities and real estate and other asset classes are constrained in what they can get away with. Now, that's a funny way of talking about this, but it needs to be understood that I am not for regulation's sake. I am for regulation to constrain those that you cannot identify how many of them are in this room by looking at them. Nor can you identify which exchanges are front-running you as a trader, trading against you, looking at the book, knowing where the orders are coming, and doing something about it. You cannot tell, nor can I, nor anyone else, how much tether is behind, is really backed by dollars, because they're not regulated. They don't have to tell you. Now, there's good people, white hats, there's bad people, black hats, and there's gray people that wear gray hats in between. If you can't identify them, you can't work with them by hoping that that wallet or that exchange or those numbers coming from miners or that hash rate are not being given to you to influence what you do. I say that not as a cynic. I say that because I've worked in every asset class you can imagine: numismatic coins, racehorses, oil drilling, gold and silver, both bullion and paper-backed, for 40 years now. And in every one of those, I could go on for hours telling you how people are scammed. Believe me, in this area, meaning cryptocurrency, because it is completely unregulated, you are being scammed every time you do something in this space. That's why I have never bought a Bitcoin. I only buy GBTC. And I only buy GBTC because it's the only thing I can buy for myself, my family, my clients that is regulated. Now, does that mean that regulated asset classes are not manipulated? I just told you that they are. They all are. Everything, stocks, junk bonds, mortgages. There is something going on always by those people trying to get ahead of the game. And I'm not talking about the obvious ones that it took 20 years to find, like Bernie Madoff. I'm talking about the thousands that are going on right now that haven't been detected. So why would you put yourself in a place in a very thinly traded, brand new asset class, hoping that the guy on the other end of your email or your phone is acting in your interest? So I just take the absolute opposite position on that, and I just assume it to be true. And I hope that it isn't true, but I'm not going to take that chance with my money.
Thank you, Tyler. And Tone, follow up to Tyler, and manipulation in
Sure.
Bitcoin prices.
I'll make it relatively short. Now, yes, I will agree that if an exchange that sees the order book and it sees all of the people trading on that exchange, if they have all of that information, they're not supposed to trade on that information. Their employees are not supposed to trade on that information. This is why a lot of the financial institutions monitor. Like, you can't use your personal phone. Like, you have to use the company phone so that it's monitored for these kinds of things. So yeah, so that would be manipulation if it's done by the exchange. What I see most people, they always just scream manipulation when they lose on trades. They never scream when they win on trades. It's always manipulation when they're on the wrong side of the trade. And a lot of it is the opposite argument to what Tyler is saying is, well, because there's a lot less regulation, it's a little bit more of a wild, wild west, and perhaps that creates a more realistic price of Bitcoin as opposed to something like interest rates. Though I actually do believe that 90% of the interest rate is free market found, and the Fed is always late, and the Fed just does what the market forces them to do. But when I think of manipulation, the asset that comes to mind for me is like diamonds. You know, because that's like the one, why can't we trade futures on diamonds? You know, why can't there be price discovery on diamonds? So, I mean, like things like that, I consider totally manipulated. But if there is a fair amount of element in a free market price discovery, 80% of the time, it really is someone with a large position moving the market, especially in something like Bitcoin. But yes, there are, of course, illegal things going on. And so we can dig deeper into the word manipulation, but I'll stop here.
Well, Tone, quick question. I heard that you could pay for this conference in Bitcoin or deflawless diamonds, right? Is it?
No, like, you know, ironically, I've never, you know, you only hear about people taking payment in diamonds, like in the movies, right? Like, hey, Tyler, ugly, I mean, like in your 40 years experience in the financial markets and you've seen crazy stuff, how often do you actually see someone take payment in diamonds that isn't like in the movie or doing something crazy illicit?
You ready? We do.
Anybody ever pay?
No one has yet to pay us in flawless diamonds, but please, for our clients in the room and listening,
Prove Tone wrong, pay them in diamonds.
Still an option.
I've seen it, but I wouldn't recommend it. But I want to get on a little bit. I'm going to take issue, and I'm going to I'm very much lean to the way Tone is, and I'm going to kind of go to the opposite side of Tyler. I've traded on every major exchange. I started as a commodities broker, and I was registered as a Series 7 security broker, and so I know my way around the block. I've traded on every major exchange. I've had 10% of open interest in certain positions before. I've had large positions on. And I've also, my mentor is E.C. Harwood. And if you haven't read his classic, The Money Mirage, you need to read it because he talks about the 3 greatest swindles in history. And number 1 is inflation. Number 2 is Social Security. Can anyone guess or know what number 3 is? It's the SEC. And if you want to know why, go read his book. Now, I'm going to take the position that the most honest exchange I've ever traded on in my life is a completely unregulated exchange, and that's BitMEX. I have never seen a more honest exchange. I've never seen a more orderly exchange, and it's hands down hundreds of % better than anything I've ever traded, and that includes the COMEX, the CME, the Board of Trade, Kansas City Value Line, whatever it is. To me, that indicates that all we need, we don't need regulation. What we need is simply the law and a court system. That is the regulation, and I'll leave it at that.
I will say that there are controversies. There have been some accusations of BitMEX doing some weird things as from the inside and trading against clients and going down at inconvenient times, but there hasn't been any definitive proof that I've seen.
That's what?
There haven't been any definitive proof of that. Just accusations.
Yes, there are lots of accusations, but you know, I've been around the block. I've seen nothing of the things happen in markets. You know, it's like a herd of cattle trying to. I used to work in the Kansas City stockyards, and when it was an active stockyards, and when these markets get active, you know, it's like a herd of cattle trying to get through a chute. It doesn't work. Doesn't matter, you know, how much capacity you have. So if you're on there, I can't get my order. And well, if you had a resting order, you did, but you can't get in if that market is fast. And they've never handled it better. You should have seen it in 1973. Sometimes I wouldn't get my fills back till the next morning before the market opened.
Thank you, Ugly. All right, we are running low on time, so I am going to ask the big question in the room to each of you guys. Murad, I'm gonna, I do want you to respond really quickly though as well, the manipulation question. Specifically, you were mentioning a quant fund. When typically people think of quants, they think of HFTs, they think the most manipulation possible in the markets. It's a debatable topic. When Lewis came out with his book though, you know, that was the topic of Wall Street. So just quickly, manipulation, but, and then, so, you know, yes, quickly, but Where is the price of Bitcoin going short term? And then end on that one, please.
Yeah, so I think that there may be some minor manipulation going on here and there, but generally I think I'm a big believer in free markets, and I think that everybody from miners to exchanges to different kind of service providers in this industry, they themselves are very adversarial among one another and very competitive. And I think as we move forward and the bigger Bitcoin becomes, the harder it will be for any one party or any small group of parties to manipulate the price or any other factor. You need to understand that exchanges are also competing amongst themselves for clientele. Whales are also trading against one another. So I have my doubts that there's some kind of a grand conspiracy going on, and 26 of them are sort of plotting against everybody else. And yeah, I think as we become bigger, a lot of the things are going to get commoditized, and the competition will get fiercer and fiercer to the point where I think the consumer will benefit, and it will get increasingly more difficult to manipulate any of the aspects. In terms of the price, I do think it's possible we may get one last sort of mini dead cat bounce, but generally I remain kind of bearish, and I think that we still have one final leg down, as I've said, to the 17 to 2300 area.
Thank you, Murad. Tone, what is our short-term price prediction down to the 1 minute chart?
Yeah, so as far as my time outlooks, I was expecting this bounce from the 4,000 area and then the $3,200 area. So this vicinity, I've been expecting a bounce to go as high as 5,000 or 6,000, but not being able to really get anywhere or not to be able to get back above 4,200 now has me as a kind of bearish across all time frames. I am looking for one more push down below 3,000 in the near future, and I don't think that's going to be the ultimate low. We still haven't seen a sufficient bounce to the upside. We've seen plenty of them between February and November when the price finally broke down. We saw probably 4 significant bounces to the upside. And in the last 2 months, in the last 2 months, we haven't seen it. And I still think one more is coming, like just one more major dead cat bounce. So short term, I am looking for prices to drop just below 3 or around 3. Then get that bounce that gets people all bullish again. Then there'll be one more drop down to that $2,000 range. And I'm a little more bearish than Murad. Medium term, I'm looking for a bounce towards the end of the year. So we're talking October, November is when I think finally we will finish the bear market. And I think 2020 is going to be a little bit of a struggle, but then 2021, 22 should be very good.
Thank you, Tone. Tyler?
I think there's tremendous weakness in the market below 4,000, and I believe we're going down to 1,000, but not stop there. I'd love to see a spike ending in a wick that just scares the heck out of everybody, where we drop from 2,800 down close to 1,000 at one time, in one day, in a couple of days, with a strong reversal to the upside back above 1,000. That's what I'd like to see. I think what we're going to see is we're going to work our way down in steps to the 3,000 area, to the $2,500 area, to the $1,700 to $1,300 area, and after each one of those, a period of time to digest that drop and come up with excuses why this is the final drop. And each of those small steps simply means there's more to come. None of them equal capitulation. You will know when there is a bottom. If you think you are at a bottom, you probably aren't. Just like last night, if you can't tell who the dupe is at the table, it's probably you. And I think that we will stay below 1,000 for a prolonged period of time if we still have all these other competing projects. And I don't think we will if we don't have those competing projects. So to me, that will be the test. I could easily see us going to the time periods that the others are talking about and getting to a bottom. And that will be the ultimate bottom. And then the question is, then what? Do you go sideways for a long period of time because everyone else in the world won't touch it because of what it just did? It just gave everything back, except those that got in under $100 or $200, and there's too few of them to talk about. We need adoption, which means we need new blood, and new blood is not going to come in unless they see that we have cleaned up the house. In the long term, I want to be very clear about this. Bitcoin is never going to die, but it might very well never go anywhere in terms of price or adoption. And that will depend on us cleaning up what we need to allow Bitcoin to get a runway up to $100,000. And if and when we see that, which I believe we will, I just can't give you the timing on it, but I think it will be well after what I'm talking about in the short term, then we are a player. And we are taking on the gold standard at about 1/4 of its value, and the war will begin, and Bitcoin needs to be able to compete against gold, not in our minds, but in the minds of the banking system and the central banks around the world as a possible alternative to the solution that they cannot any longer fix themselves. They need something to come along to help them, and I'm fully hopeful that that will be Bitcoin.
Thank you, Tyler. So you guys heard it. It's $10 million Bitcoin, but don't buy tomorrow, it seems. And we'll have to continue to watch Tone's TA videos. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ugly, Murad, Tone, Tyler, and Tone, we have your final.